ladies and gentlemen, we're back. They can't keep us off air no more. Welcome back, you guys, to Roundtable. We hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We're back. I'm Tristan Harlan. You already know who this is. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Cooper Melder. Cooper, how you doing, my guy?
I'm doing great. Back here for Red Wolf Roundtable, and we have a great show upcoming for y'all.
Yeah, I mean, last night was the greatest college football game I've ever seen. The national championship, two big dogs, Georgia, Alabama. Who would have thought? Well, a lot of people did think, but who would have thought what a great game we would have had? We had Georgia coming in off the SEC championship loss. Cooper, it was a great game. So why don't you go ahead and break it down for everybody?
Well, we all know the outcome of the game. Georgia did go on to win it, but at the beginning, it was kind of looking like, back in 2011 when Alabama and LSU played each other, field goal after field goal. It was just kind of one of those things that, us fans, we were kind of getting, maybe a little bit boring, but as a college football fan, you're seeing two dominating powerhouses, two great defense go at each other. And in the end, defense wins championships. Georgia's been getting their defense hyped up all year, and, defense wins championships. I said it again. I'm going to say it again because that's ultimately what won Georgia the game.
Yeah, Cooper, I mean, you go back and look, there was a lot of great defensive plays for both sides, Alabama and Georgia. Georgia had a lot of sacks. Jordan Davis came up with a big sack to start the game, had a strip sack, which was later ruled an incomplete pass because Bryce Young was able to get his arm going forward. But, man, Nick Saban did not look like Nick Saban in that game. Let me tell you, looking at that game, if you look at Nick Saban, he was kind of flustered. He had his starters out there. He had his guys out there doing their thing, doing Alabama football. But, man, oh, man, did Georgia finally have their number? Did Kirby Smart finally have the advantage on Nick Saban he's been looking for a long time now, my guy? I mean, it was just one of those games that anybody could have won. Anybody could have had the upper hand, and Kirby Smart and his Georgia Bulldogs were able to make it count when it mattered most. They were able to get a pick six. To end the game, really, they were able to get a lot of great touchdowns. Alabama, they did suffer an injury kind of halfway towards the game. I've heard a lot of things like it's anywhere from a knee sprain to a twisted knee to MCL sprain tear, ACL tear sprain. But, we just hope he's going to get better soon. And, you hate to go out like that in a national championship game. I mean, everybody saw it. I'm sure everybody in the country watched it. So, Cooper, it was just one of those games that you really hit hard. Regardless if you was a Georgia or Bama fan, you knew who you wanted to win. Nobody wants to see Bama win a national championship again. Nobody really does. That's why everybody roots against Alabama. That's why Nick Saban says, that rat poison was very yummy, because everybody is tired of seeing them win all the time, my guy.
Well, I hate to break it for everybody, but we're going to probably as long as Nick Saban's in Bama, we're going to be seeing them probably again next year in the playoffs, making another crazy run. But, watching last night's game, it was kind of all right. When it was kind of one of those you're wondering when you're going to see the true Alabama Crimson Tide, when you're going to see them take over, as Alabama does. But it just, every time something happened, Georgia kept fighting back, getting a stop, forcing them to kick a field goal, and that's what really won them the game, was key stops they had. I mean, we saw that controversial fumble call. I mean, it was a fumble where, Stetson Bennett, he goes for the throw, and the ball leaves his hand, and the Alabama guy just so happens he catches the ball barely by a centimeter inbounds, and, Georgia, they could have curled up in a ball and the refs are against us. This isn't our game, but they didn't. They kept coming back and fighting, and that's why Georgia won the big top dog of it all.
Cooper, we were watching this game with each other last night. Coming off the Christmas break, we were able to get back on campus, watch the game. I just want to go back to that controversial call that a lot of people say, it should have been a fumble. It should have been a fumble. No, if you know anything about the game of football, and I mean any of the basic rules, everybody knows that was a true fumble. It wasn't like back in, I think it was 2006 when Oakland and New England played in the NFL and Tom Brady got sacked by Charles Woodson.
The tuck rule.
Yeah, the tuck rule game. But obviously it was a fumble, and what a great play it was by Alabama to get the ball, not even a centimeter. To my eyes, I'm not good at math, so you might want to fact check me on that if you really want to know. But It was maybe a centimeter away from the sideline, and it was just a great athletic play from Alabama. That's something that Nick Saban teaches from day one, from when you're a freshman on campus, when you get enrolled. That's the kind of football Nick Saban teaches. He wants his guys to be the best, to be the fastest, to be the strongest. And, man, I just want to talk about the postgame for a second, because Nick Saban, he was on postgame, and you got to look at it. Nick Saban looks at the reporters and says, don't come at my guys for losing this game. They fought hard. They're the reason why we're here. And, they take the loss to themselves, and they're going to come back next year, and they're probably – it's too early to tell, but they're probably going to win it all. It's Nick Saban and it's Nick Saban, so who's to know?
And before that, we really wrap anything up. Let's go ahead and let's go to the stats of the game just to show what Georgia did right. And as you can see for yourself, if you remember, I said before the game, if Georgia's going to want to win the game, they're going to have to stop the run, and they did exactly that, holding Alabama to 30 rushing yards.
I don't remember anybody that could done that.
Yes, and Georgia, they ran for almost 200 against Bama. You want the key to success for Bama? Look what Georgia did. They did exactly what they needed to.
Well, really, if you really want to point out some key things, look at the stats. Look at the turnovers. Sure, Georgia had the one, but Bama, very rarely something that you don't see, had 2 turnovers. And they had 7 penalties, not to add. Nick Saban teaches perfection, so that's very rare to see as well. But on third down, they went 9 for 20, and those 2 turnovers really sealed the game for them. They had the pick six in the game, and a lot of things happened that didn't go Bama's way. It's very rare to say that things don't go Alabama's way, but, man, if you look at the stats and you look at the game, you watch the highlights, and, man, it's very obvious to see that it wasn't Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide's night. That happens every once in a while. It's happened to us playing NCAA 14. It's happened to everybody playing NCAA 14. But that's just the thing that, you can't always get your way. Mm-hmm. Our parents tell us when we're toddlers, stop crying before I give you something to cry about. You can't always get your way. So this is prime example that not even God himself, Nick Saban, can get his way 100% of the time.
Well, Nick Saban, great coach, the greatest of all time. We've said that multiple times. But, Georgia, they just came ready to play. It was a different Georgia team Alabama versed in the SEC championship. No doubt in my mind. That was a completely different Georgia team. They looked confident. They were ready to play, and they didn't fight down. In the SEC championship game, it just felt like Georgia, it looked like they were kind of scared, not in comfortable waters. They're undefeated all year, and then they got humbled up by Alabama.
Right.
So that's a completely different Georgia team from the SEC championship game, and that was about 3 weeks spread apart.
You just look at the playoff as a whole. Cincinnati, they really disappointed me. They really did. Cincinnati, if anybody from Cincinnati is watching this right now, you choked. I'm sorry to say it, but you choked. You broke my heart, just like LSU did. But, come on. You had this proves that nobody from the American Athletic Conference should ever make the playoff again unless they're just the greatest team of all time. I know Memphis is in there. I know you all gave me a little bit of a hard time for being associated with Memphis because my best friend goes there. But, that just shows you why these smaller schools don't get the respect that they deserve, because when they step up to Alabama, when they step up to a team like Georgia, they just get run over. And Michigan did the exact same.
Well, this could very rarely end non-Power 5 conferences getting into the playoffs.
All right, Cooper. So other than that, we're going to take a break real quick, guys, so we can catch our breaths and take notes. We'll be right back after this.
Every day,
millions of people are connecting.
And even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together,
we should still make an effort.
To get to know each other
on a deeper level.
Father,
cosplayer,
mentor,
actor.
It's time we take a step forward.
It's time we take a step forward.
Come together
And discover
How accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us. That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu.
We don't have time for delays.
We don't have time for spills.
Next.
We don't have time for setbacks. Let's be real.
Getting the flu shot
Helps you fight the flu.
Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
And welcome back to Red Wolf Roundtable. I'm Cooper Melder, and here alongside me is Tristan Harlan. Now, you know, the BCS was, people said, oh, we want a playoff, blah, 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 blah. Yes. But what if the playoff was invented at the beginning of the BCS? So let's take a look when the BCS first came out, first invented, 1998, what a 4-team bracket would look like. Take it away, Tristan.
Yeah, Cooper, I mean, you see on your screen now, you see the 6 teams really, the 2, 5, and 6 really doesn't matter, but you see the bracket now. You got Tennessee, Florida State, Ohio State, and Kansas State, flip-flop Kansas State and Ohio State. But, you know, you got to take a look back at that season, what was going on. Peyton Manning had just left Tennessee. You know, Florida State was really still on their rise of dominance that they had during the 90s. You know, the ACC as a whole was really dominant that decade, really. And so you just got to take a look at, you know, the stats. You know, Tennessee averaged 187 yards through the air. T. Martin, their quarterback, had 2,164 passing yards and 19 touchdowns. Tennessee had a bunch of guys averaging over 500, you know, rushing yards. And their notable games, you got to take a look at it. Syracuse, they played Tennessee on the road, almost beat them. Donovan McNabb, a future Pro Bowler, would have been on that Syracuse team. Georgia got dominated by them. Florida, they also got beat by Tennessee, and a team that you're familiar with, the Arkansas Razorbacks, got beat by 4 points to Arkansas, the second closest game of the year for Tennessee, which Syracuse almost beat them 34-33. Now you take a look at Florida State; they averaged 251 passing yards that year. Chris Wink had 2,487 yards, 19 touchdowns, and man, just the time to be alive in '98. The passing game is really starting to come full into fruition, and a lot of guys were trying to get the ball in the air. So Florida State, they were another one of those teams that tried to get the ball in the air. They had a couple games that were really notable. They had a neutral site against A&M, which they won 23-17. They lost to North Carolina State 7-24, and then they went from number 2 to 11 after that loss. Then they defeated Florida 23-12. FSU was number 5 and Florida was number 4. There was no conference championship at the time. I'm not sure. There could have been one and they just wasn't in it, so I got to double check that. And then they got bumped up to number 2. Then you take a look at these other teams like Kansas State and Ohio State. You got Kansas State. They also was another one of those teams that really passed the ball well. Michael Bishop, their quarterback, had 2,844 yards, 23 touchdowns, and they only had two rushes over 500 yards, Eric Hickson had 902 yards, 9 touchdowns, and Michael Bishop, their quarterback, had 748 yards and 14 TDs. Darnell McDonald, their lead receiver, I saw this, had over 1,000 receiving yards with 1,092 yards, 9 touchdowns. And fun fact, Kansas State held the number 2 spot until losing in the Big 12 championship to Texas A&M 33-36. What a Kansas way to do things. Ohio State, a team everybody knows. Ohio State, the Ohio State University, the Buckeyes, the Horseshoe. Go OSU, beat the Blue. They got to look at it this way, brother. They had 298 passing yards averaging. Their quarterback, 3,330 yards. That's the most of all the other quarterbacks. He had 25 TDs. Michael Wiley had 1,235 rushing yards, 10 TDs. Joe Montgomery, 766 yards, 7 touchdowns. Had 2 receivers almost break 1,000-yard mark. David Boston had over 1,000 with 1,435 yards, 13 touchdowns. D. Miller had 915 yards, 3 touchdowns, And get this. We talked about Kansas State holding the number 2 spot. Ohio State held the number 1 spot for 9 straight weeks until losing to who else but Michigan State. The only other team Ohio State ever loses to besides Michigan if John Harbaugh is not their coach. You got to look at it. They lost 24-28. There was no Big Ten title game for OSU, and then they went on to beat Michigan 31-16, which was able to bump them back up. So you take a look at these 4 teams, Cooper, and Tennessee, they had just lost Peyton Manning. They still had their coach Philip Former, and these 4 teams were really the best 4 teams at the time according to the BCS rankings. Now this isn't the AP poll. This is the BCS rankings, the first one ever that we ever saw. So Cooper, if you want to look at it this way, let's break each game down. You got Tennessee taking on Ohio State, 2 teams that kind of are the powerhouses of college football. Personally, I don't know about you, but I think Tennessee would win that game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like Tennessee, they had a great team that year, Like you were saying, when Arkansas almost went to Tennessee and beat them. I remember that game. I've seen highlights. Arkansas's quarterback goes into snap, and they're really looking to run the ball out, trips over his offensive lineman before handing the ball off and fumbles it, puts the ball on the ground, and Tennessee obviously wins the game. And so it was one of those. Arkansas could have won, but Tennessee, they would go on to win it. Now, Florida State, Kansas State, really maybe a toss-up game.
Right, man. I mean, you just got to look at it this way. Kansas State, Florida State, 2 teams that, prominent in the other conferences. That's not the SEC or the Big Ten, the kind of teams that kind of fluctuate with the top, so to speak. Florida State, they were still in their dominant run. I don't think Kansas State had what it took to beat them at that point in time. Now, nowadays, it's a different story because Florida State sucks nowadays. But I think Florida State would have won it. And you look at the championship game, Tennessee would have took it all the way.
Yeah, I will agree with that. And so now we go to a different bracket. We go to the year 2007. Some may call the year of the upset. You have number 1 Ohio State, number 2 LSU, number 4 Oklahoma, and then number 3 Virginia Tech. Now, we all know who ended up winning. Obviously, you do, about 2007. But if you look at it, Ohio State averaged 196 passing yards a game, along with 196 on the ground. So it was a little balanced attack. And so we go to LSU. They averaged 225 yards through the air, along with 214 on the ground. And they were a good team. Notable losses for LSU because it was the year of the upset. They lost to Kentucky in 3 overtimes. Then the final game of the year.
Here we go.
A Friday after Thanksgiving, the Little Razorbacks came into Baton Rouge and knocked off the number 1 team in the country, LSU. All right, and that's all I had to say. D-Mac got robbed of the Heisman that year. So now we go to number 3, Oklahoma. They had a notable quarterback, Sam Bradford. He threw for 3,121 yards and 36 TDs. And some Cowboys fans may know him, DeMarco Murray was a backup running back at the time. He rushed for 764 yards and only 9 touchdowns, so Oklahoma was a passing team. Then you go to number 3, Virginia Tech. They averaged 196 passing yards through the air and 133 yards on the ground. And so when looking at it, if we did this bracket again, I would have Oklahoma and LSU in the championship.
Oh, yeah, I mean, 2007 storybook year. I'm not going to go on another ramble because I'm sure nobody wants to hear me ramble. But 2007 was the year of upsets. Number 1, number 2, both those teams was losing consecutive weeks back to back. LSU and Arkansas, don't want to hear you go on that again. I already hear from you enough. But you got to look at it, man. LSU was a team that really shouldn't have been in that game. But, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Ohio State really would have been in there. I think Ohio State didn't really have it against Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma sneaks out of that game alive. And then LSU, they beat Virginia Tech in a blowout earlier that year, so I think LSU would have moved on. And, hey, what else than to see LSU and Les Miles holding up that championship trophy in New Orleans, Louisiana. So for the 2007 playoff bracket, I got LSU going all the way.
All right, you heard it there from them. And so we are going to take a break, but don't go anywhere. We got 2 more brackets for you. You're watching Red Wolf Roundtable.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us. That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu.
We don't have time for delays.
We don't have time for spills.
Next.
We don't have time for setbacks. Let's be real.
Getting the flu shot?
Helps you fight the flu.
Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back, everybody, to Red Wolf Roundtable. Now, we got 2 more brackets for everybody now. We got 2011, what a controversial year that was for the BCS National Championship standings. Cooper, you taking a look at the bracket, man. A lot of teams, a lot of people say that Oklahoma State should have been the team to been in the championship. So why don't you break it down a little bit for us?
Well, you see, you have LSU at number 1. They went undefeated, and Alabama at number 2. And the reason why people didn't want Alabama to be at number 2 was because LSU earlier that year went to the Crimson Tide's own house and knocked them off in a crazy thriller defensive game. And Oklahoma State went undefeated all year, then lost one to Iowa State. And, you know, that was their only loss, and LSU dominated the championship game. And so it was one of those, it's a toss-up, but with the BCS, this is really the year that people wanted the playoff was because of this.
Cooper, you take a look at this year, and you got to think of a couple things. One, Andrew Luck, future number 1 overall pick, was at Stanford University at the time. LSU, that was probably the best LSU team that Les Miles ever coached. They had the best defense that year with a lot of future draft picks, future All-Pro guys, future Super Bowl winners. You know, you just got to look at it for account. Alabama, yes, they did lose by a field goal to LSU in Tuscaloosa. Ohio, or I don't know why I keep calling them Ohio State, but Oklahoma State, they lost to a team that wasn't even ranked. At least Alabama lost to an LSU team that was at least top 5 in the nation. I mean, I can see why people are mad, but you got to listen, people. You got to take it to this account. Alabama will get in over Oklahoma State any day of the week for the sole purpose of is the SEC corporate football is way better than the Big 12. At least the SEC has its conference championship game. At least the SEC brings revenue for the NCAA. So for you to sit there and on your couch cry about Oklahoma State not getting into the national championship game, that's really ridiculous because Alabama and LSU, yes, it was a 21-0 blowout, but that still was a very exciting game. And even during the season, everybody wanted LSU, Alabama, number 2. They wanted to see Nick Saban versus Les Miles again, this time for the trophy. So you got to look at it, and you can't leave Stanford out. Stanford's going to be the team that's going to sneak up behind you. Andrew Luck's going to throw for 300, 400 yards and beat you. But you know what? LSU, that's the best offense versus the best defense. The best defense is going to win 95% of the time. So I see LSU beating Stanford in the first game, and you look at the other game, would have been the game that really would have shut a lot of people up. As you see 5 and 6, you got your team down there way bye-bye. And you got to realize that Bama would have mopped the floor with Oklahoma State just like they did to Cincinnati this year. So it would have been Bama, LSU, and who knows what would have happened. It would have been a different outcome. Who knows? But all we know is that this is the reason why the BCS is there, because they know what they're talking about, even though, honestly, the AP poll is a little bit better than the BCS rankings because the media sits there and watches every single game. Now, every coach can't sit there and watch every game while they're trying to get their team to win. So for that sole reason, I think Alabama and LSU would have still ended up meeting in the championship, but I don't know. I think it would have been a different outcome to 21-0. I think LSU may have had a little bit more confidence after beating Stanford.
Yeah, and it's just 2011 was a great year because at one point it literally went, the SEC was just pure dominance. You had number 1 LSU, number 2 Alabama, and number 3 Arkansas. 3 SEC West teams is insane. So now we got our last bracket, and it's the last year of the BCS. You go to the 2013-2014 season, and you have number 1 Florida State, number 2 Auburn, number 3 Bama, and the number 4 Michigan State. Now Florida State, they did win it all that year, led by Jameis Winston. He threw for over 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. Just crazy. He was a crazy college athlete. And then, another big name, Devontae Freeman at running back, rushed for 1,000 yards for that Florida State team. So Florida State, they had the keys to win. And then you look at Auburn. Auburn, they're going to win the football game.
Davis down the sideline, 106
on the
yards.
Kick six, yes. They were led by Nick Marshall. He only threw for, he almost reached 2,000 yards passing, but they were led by Trey Mason, who rushed for 1,816 yards. And as well as Nick Marshall, he also rushed for over 1,000. So they were dual threat. Now Auburn did have one loss to number 6 LSU, 35-21, but they did upset number 1 Alabama. Now if you're looking at Alabama, A.J. McCarron at quarterback, you have T.J. Yeldon at running back, and then you have Kenyon Drake as the backup. Oh, who's the third string? Let me tell you, Derrick Henry. Yeah, that running back class was loaded, but they really couldn't do it. And so we go to Michigan State.
The
Spartans. The mighty Spartans. They lost early to number 22 Notre Dame and then won out. They even beat number 2 Ohio State by 10, and they didn't make it in. They had Florida State versus Auburn. And so Michigan State kind of felt left out. But, stat-wise, if we're looking at this, if we did do the playoffs, I feel like Florida State would have mopped the floor with Michigan State.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Florida State had all the keys there, and Michigan State really didn't have an answer. But you look at it. Iron Bowl rematch, my guy. Nick Saban's got a chance to do his wrong right for the kick six to make all the mighty Crimson Tide fans happy. But you know what? I don't think they could have done it. I'm betting it against Nick Saban, the dumbest thing to do in college football. I'm betting against him. I don't think Derrick Henry as a third stringer could have stayed on the sideline and done a daggum thing. So for that reason, I got Auburn going all the way and winning the national championship. And you got to look at it this way. The SEC, as much as people love to hate the SEC, calling it corporate football, everybody loves to say, oh, they got money to pay the refs off. Listen, let me tell you something. The NCAA does not care about how you view the game of football. They care about how much money they can put in their pockets. So for you to sit there on Twitter and just run your thumbs across the screen and say the AAC or the Big East or whatever conference you want to put up there does not get a fair shot like the SEC does, you got to think of it this way. They do not have the money like the SEC does. They will never have the money like the SEC does. That's why Memphis is not in the Big 12. That is why a lot of these smaller schools will never get another shot at the playoffs just because of what Cincinnati just proved.
Well, back to 2014, I would have Florida State, like I said, mop the floor in Michigan State, but I feel like Auburn does get beat by the mighty Crimson Tide, but I still have Florida State winning. They just had a great offense with Jameis Winston and Devontae Freeman, and a notable win, they went to Idaho. Well, Idaho went to Florida State and got beat 80-14. So that's all I got to say. If that doesn't prove offense, then I don't know what else does. So that'll do it for this segment. We got one more segment for y'all, the NFL playoffs. You're watching Red Wolf Roundtable.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking,
let's go.
You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time for the final segment of today's show. It is time for some of the most exciting football if you're an NFL fan. This is the time that a lot of people say that they're NFL fans, but they're not really. They just like betting money. So let's go ahead and talk about the NFL playoffs. You got two teams to pick from if you really want a bandwagon this year. You got a team in Green Bay and a team in Nashville. Which one do you like more? Do you like the snow and cold weather, or do you like country music? I don't know. I like country music, but I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. So, I don't know who I got in the playoffs this year, but it's sure to be an exciting one, Cooper. I mean, how are you feeling about the playoffs since your team is actually in the playoffs?
My team is in the playoffs, but sadly they will be taking on the mighty Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the first round. And so I'm excited to see what my team can do, but if I'm being realistically, the Buccaneers are going to go take on Green Bay the next week, and then the Cowboys are taking on San Francisco, and you can catch that on Nickelodeon to see all the slime in the world. But I'm going to take San Francisco because I have to. And then you take on the Cardinals and the Rams. Now the Rams, they're looking to win because if they go all the way, they're playing home field advantage. But it's not going to happen. Kyler Murray's going to take on and beat the Rams. And so that's round one of the wild card. We go to the AFC, Raiders, Bengals. Joe Burrow is going insane. So is Jamar Chase. So give me the Bengals round one. Patriots, Bills. This will be a good game, but, I have to take Bill Belichick. You don't bet against Saban. You don't bet against Bill Belichick. And now the Steelers in Kansas City. I'm sorry, but Ben Roethlisberger will be playing his last game in Kansas City. The Chiefs are going to win. And so, Green Bay Buccaneers, Aaron Rodgers gets his revenge. And then I have the Cardinals beating the 49ers. And then on the AFC, you have Burrow versus Mac Jones, and I'm going to take Joe Burrow over the Patriots. And then Kansas City versus Tennessee, I'm going to have Kansas City again. Kansas City's going to pull it off. They're becoming a hot team. Now, Green Bay versus the Cardinals. I'm going Green Bay. They're going to LA. Now, this is going to shock a couple people out there, but I feel like the Bengals have what it takes. They've been playing great football. I love their offense. Give me Bengals versus the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl at Los Angeles.
My God, Cooper, I never thought I'd hear you bet for two LSU guys to win a football game. I don't know what has gotten into you, Savannah. What have you been doing to my friend? I don't know what you're saying, but I like your thinking. You got to look at it this way, guys. You got a lot of interesting football going on in the NFC side. Let's take a look at my predictions. You got the Cardinals against the Rams. Shout out Ian Vance. I'm sorry I traded you Kyler Murray a long time ago in our fantasy football league, but I got the LA Rams taking this wild card weekend game against the Cardinals. And you go ahead into the Cowgirls against the Niners. I hate the Niners. They should have lost, so the Saints could have been in this spot. So I'm going, sadly, the Cowgirls. And you got the Eagles and Brady. Brady, you can't bet against Brady. Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, so I'm going to take Tom Brady there. You go to the AFC side, it shouldn't be stranger who I'm picking in the Raiders versus Bengals game. Give me Joey B. Give me Joey Ice. I want the Bengals going all the way. Then you got the Patriots and the Bills. I heard a rumor that it's supposed to be snowing very hard for this game. And last time the Patriots were in the snow, they had Tom Brady as the quarterback. Right now, I don't think Matt Jones is used to playing in the snow, so I think the Bills may upset the Patriots. You got the Steelers and Chiefs. Ben Roethlisberger has nothing to lose. The Chiefs have everything to lose, and for that reason, I think Big Ben is going to shock the world and beat Patty Mahomes so his brother can't do no more stupid TikTok dances on Super Bowl Sunday. You go ahead and look at the next round. I got the Rams beating the Cowgirls. I got the Bucks beating the Packers because, quite frankly, at this point in his career, Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy. He is not clutching the postseason. And, I say this, and then he's going to come back and he's going to be clutching the postseason. It happened there in the bowl show. I said a lot of these teams were going to win. They ended up losing. I said Cincinnati was going to shock Bama, and they ended up losing. So, for right now, I got the Bucks going to the championship game for the NFC against the Rams. And you look at the AFC side, you got the Bengals, you got the Bills. I got the Bengals going to the AFC Championship game. Then you got the Steelers and Titans. A healthy Derrick Henry's coming back. I'm sorry, Ben. I'm sorry, Big B. I don't think you're going to the conference championship. Give me the Tennessee Titans. So then you go to the conference championship game. You got the Bucks. You got the Rams. Tom Brady versus Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford, the unclutchest quarterback in NFL history because he ain't got Megatron saving him no more. I want Brady going back to the promised land, back to the Super Bowl. And you go to the AFC side. The Titans versus the Bengals. Two promising teams, two electrifying teams. You got a young running back named Derrick Henry coming off the IR. You got a young receiver named Jamar Chase coming from LSU. You got a young quarterback named Joey B coming off an ACL tear. Man, this is going to be an electrifying game. But, I hope the Titans don't come up 1 yard short. Give me the Bengals. So I got the Bengals, the Bucks. Excuse me, I almost said the Patriots. I got the Bengals, the Bucks. I got Joey B versus Tom Brady, number 9 versus number 12. Young versus old. Tom Brady, get ready to pass the torch because I got Cincy winning it all, baby. Chili's not the only thing Cincy's going to be good for after this year's Super Bowl because the Bengals will upset the Buccaneers 34-21. Joey B will win Super Bowl MVP, win Comeback Player of the Year, and don't forget about Jamar Chase is fixed to win Offensive Rookie of the Year when the Bengals go all the way.
Well, Green Bay wants Aaron Rodgers to stay, and for that reason, Aaron Rodgers is going to beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl, get one more ring. You know what I think is going to happen? He's going to retire surprisingly after winning it.
Aaron Rodgers, he's flirted with it. You heard him talk on the Pat McAfee show. He's flirted with the idea of retirement. He's obviously not in a good spot right now with the NFL with Roger Goodell. And quite frankly, who wants to be? Roger Goodell's a clown. Anybody can run the NFL better than you can, Roger. I'm sorry. But for that reason, I don't know. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to overcomplicate things, and it's just going to be one of those things where he's not clutching, he chokes it away.
Well, it's one of those things we're going to have to wait and see. You know what, Tristan? That looks like time is up, and that will do it for this episode of Red Wolf Roundtable. We want to thank you for tuning in, and be sure to look out for our next episode next week. I'm Cooper Melder, and alongside me is
Tristan Farley. Goodbye, everybody. Hope you have a great week. We will see you guys next time.